Welcome to Alive to Thrive OT. I'm Tracy Schnabel and
Lauren.
So today we're going to be talking about why the gut should get all the glory. 5 ways the gut impacts your health. So we're run by 2 occupational therapists. We're both OTs that noticed a gap in healthcare that wasn't being addressed. Our goal is to share as much information as possible with our audience in regard to health and wellness, rehab and recovery, growth and development, and a non-toxic lifestyle. Don't fall into the hype that autoimmune disorders and chronic diseases are normal. They're not. Don't believe that growing old means growing impaired. You don't have to. And let's bridge the gap and empower ourselves to reclaim our health. So our purpose, a little bit more about that. We're here to present information that we've researched as well as questions and commentary we have based on our own extensive research. Our goal is to provide information to empower our audience to ask their own questions and form their own conclusions. We want you to be a critical thinker and an examiner of your healthcare. We understand how overwhelming, sometimes emotionally difficult, new information can be when it conflicts with previously held beliefs. Our goal is to compassionately educate our viewers for the betterment of their lives and the lives of their loved ones. We are simply a stepping stone on your journey to truth. So a legal disclaimer, hold your horses, here we go. All claims made on our podcast, videos, and websites are for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We recommend contacting the appropriate medical professional for advisement on specific medical concerns. No warranties or representations are given in regard to any information presented, and we are not responsible for any injury or loss suffered from any viewing parties. Proceed at your own risk, please. Links provided are for informational purposes. However, we do not take responsibility for any additional information these websites and companies may provide regarding healthcare. If you think you may have a medical emergency, please call 911 immediately.
All right, so let's get started. So let's review old school physiology. What I learned, what a lot of people learned in school, probably what they're still teaching. The purpose of the gut. Digest your food, right? Absorb nutrients, eliminate waste, poop it out, and filter out toxins. And usually toxins, for some reason, they always mention alcohol, like as if that's the only toxin that's in our life. There are a lot of toxins in food, but that's not really advertised in our textbooks. But let's focus on absorbing nutrients. Okay, what did you learn in school about what nutrients do for your body? Did they mention the words prevention? Did they mention reversal of illness, reversal of disease and disorders via nutrients? Or did they just say like, oh yeah, like in order to be healthy, you have to eat healthy, and then kind of just skim over it? Because to me, I feel like it was really skimmed over. And we didn't really focus a lot on nutrients, which is crazy because, I'll tell you, newer research is talking about the microbiome. So the microbiome is literally trillions, not millions, not billions, trillions of viruses, bacteria, and fungi that exist within our bodies. We are full of bacteria. Now, how many of you say, ew, bacteria, gross, viruses, gross, fungus, gross, right? We were taught that this stuff is disgusting and you shouldn't have it in your body. Well, guess what? They make up 99% of the DNA that exists in our body. 99%. So the bacteria that lives within our body has 99% of the DNA, and our human DNA is only that extra 1%. In addition to that, the bacteria in our body has 10 times more cells than human cells. So we are literally 99% not human, if you think about it. And everyone's bacteria is different. So how are we going to do this cookie cutter approach to healthcare where we say, oh, you have this, you need this, but we're all so different, right? Let's go into this a little bit further. So reviewing newer research, the gut-brain connection. So before we were kind of just taught like the brain does everything, the brain's powerful, the brain needs nothing. That is not true at all. So the gut is actually now considered the second brain. So the gut literally sends messages to the brain via serotonin. Serotonin helps to regulate sleep, your appetite, it manages your mood, it inhibits pain. So from what I learned in my classes, serotonin is produced in the brain. It's a neurotransmitter, blah, blah, blah. It does all these things, but the brain produces it. The brain only produces about 5% of the serotonin in your body. And the gastrointestinal epithelium, which is just your gut, produces about 90% of serotonin. So that's totally opposite from what I learned. And I bet you didn't learn that in school either. So in order to produce serotonin, you need something called tryptophan. Tryptophan helps to build serotonin. So when you have low tryptophan, you can have problems with your mood, you can have problems with your brain function, your cognition, you can have symptoms of IBS, so it can cause both brain issues and gut issues. And tryptophan you can get from your food. Gut bacteria activates neural pathways between the brain and the gut. So this is basically saying we need bacteria in order for our brain and gut to communicate. And we need our brain and our gut to communicate in order to make this serotonin and for better sleep, decrease pain, all that stuff. So they rely on each other, they need each other, but really it's sounding like the gut is where it all is. You know, we learned about the brain, but the gut is really important, and that's not something that's really being shared, or at least it wasn't when I was in school. So the brain is actually made up of micronutrients, which are supplied by the gut. So without these micronutrients, the brain can't function properly. So food is essential for brain function. Okay, let's talk about the brain itself. The brain, we consider the brain this like sterile, clean, pristine, perfect environment. Not true. The brain has its own microbiome. The brain has bacteria in it. And this was actually stumbled upon, like a lot of things, by mistake. So they were cutting apart these brains and they saw bacteria and they're like, oh crap, we contaminated our samples. So then they ended up testing more and more, and what they found is that no, there is bacteria in the brain. And not only is there bacteria in the brain, but it is the same bacteria that's found in your gut. So why am I concerned? Why does any of this matter? Well, like I said, we focus so much on the brain in school, and the gut is so important. I feel like I mention my age a lot, but I'm 29 years old. I graduated from OT school in 2013, which means a lot of doctors went to school before me. And if this is what I'm learning, or if this is what I learned, I mean, if they're not keeping up with their research, and maybe some of them are, and that's great, but some of them might not be either. So if they're not keeping up with this, we got to hold them accountable. And if they are, great, good. You have a good doctor. Stick with them. So the book that I used when I was in school is called Pathology for the Health Professions. So I spent a lot of time on this. I don't know. I think I just did it to prove a point. It's 642 pages with the appendices removed. So it's a lot of pages. It goes over all the body systems, different illnesses, definitions, treatments, all that stuff. So nutrition, I looked it up in the index. It's mentioned 5 times in the book. 5. And a lot of it's like, oh, how your nutrition changes when you age, cancer, you don't eat as much, nutritional deficits, like, you know, disorders like anorexia and stuff, nutrition during pregnancy, and nutrition as therapy. So it's not mentioned in like any major diagnosis at all. Diet is mentioned 11 times according to the index. So, you know, mostly associated with cancer. If you eat a lot of bad food, they said you could get cancer, heart disease, which we kind of already knew, colon cancer, cavities, obviously, diabetes, gastrointestinal disorders, pregnancy, nutrition, malnutrition, and as therapy. So a little bit more than nutrition, but really not. But let's take a look at something shocking here. 642 pages. I estimated about 1.5 pages talk about nutrition and about 2 pages talk about diet. And after everything I just said, like, diet is huge. The gut is a huge part of our health, and yet 3.5 out of 642 pages are actually talking about not even the gut though, just diet in general. Just basic, oh, you should eat a healthy diet. Like, no detail, no like, oh, microbiome this and gut that. Nothing, not in there. And I hope new textbooks, I haven't looked at new textbooks, I didn't really want to buy one, but I haven't looked at them. I'm hoping it's included in there, but what I also learned is that it takes 20 years for research that we are discovering to get into medical education. And so we're just finding out about microbiome within the last really 10 to 15 years, probably like 10 years. So it might not be in textbooks, which means it might not be in practice, depending on how your doctor's researching.
I saw a documentary once saying that doctors only receive like 1 nutritional class. It's very minimal. And my cousin, who is an acupuncturist, he said that a heart doctor came to him to ask him about nutrition and the heart. And he said, well, you're a heart doctor. Don't you know about that? And he said, No, I have no idea. I wasn't really extensively taught in that.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah. So, and doctors, a lot of doctors don't even send someone to a nutritionist unless they're fat. Mm-hmm. You could be skinny and be extremely unhealthy. Yeah. So I think that's a stereotype of being unhealthy is being fat, because that's not. There are so many other things that are making you unhealthy, but let's not even get into that. So, interesting about this book, they never suggested to attempt diet or lifestyle change before going to medication. Medication was mentioned throughout all of these sections, but it was never mentioned to try diet first.
Yikes.
It's kind of sad. So let's get into it. Why should the gut get all the glory? 5 ways the gut impacts your health. Number 1, immunity. So there are 3 types of relationships between the microbiome and its host. Microbiome being all the bacteria inside of you, host being the body, you. There's a mutualistic relationship where you're benefiting off of each other. There's a parasitic relationship where it's the microbiome or the bacteria is harming you, so that's your bad bacteria. And there's a commensal relationship where one party's benefiting and the other one's kind of just sitting there not benefiting or being harmed at all. So these are the 3 types of relationships, and it's really important that we maintain these specific relationships. The gastrointestinal tract has one of the highest number of immune cells in the body. So a lot of your immunity comes from within your gut, and it's important to contain those cells within your gut. There are certain structures set up to keep these things in place so that they're not touching other parts of your body, basically. So IgA, that's associated with like food allergies and stuff. If you had your IgA levels tested, that's housed in the gut. Makes sense, right? Food allergies, but it's allergies of other sorts too. So when you have an allergic reaction, it's your IgA is all messed up, and that comes from the gut. Your T cells are your memory cells. This is a huge thing, and please listen to this. T cells are produced based on your microbiome, based on your gut. Not necessarily pathogen exposure.
Wow.
What does this mean? This means that everyone who's been telling you, oh, we have to be exposed to the virus in order to build antibodies to protect you from the virus in the future, not necessarily. Yes, you could, that's one method, but research is now showing that having good gut bacteria is actually essential in making T cells. So if your immunity is compromised by toxins, by aluminum that you're putting in your body, and food toxins and all this other stuff, that's compromising your gut health, which is compromising your immunity, which is making you more susceptible to being sick. So really, you need to look at what you're putting into and onto your body, because if you're ruining your gut health, you are going to be more susceptible to all sorts of health problems, both acute, like colds and flus, and chronic, like cancers and things, and autoimmune disease. So they did studies. If these cells are uncontrolled and they start coming out of your gut, it causes autoimmunity, because those 3 relationships I talked about, everyone's confused. What kind of relationship do we have? Oh, we need to start attacking this. I don't know what to do. Everything goes haywire, and you start attacking things that you shouldn't attack, like your own body. And that causes autoimmune disorders, which over half of the population has. So obviously we're having issues with our gut that are not being addressed or being brought to light. So antibiotics, they looked at antibiotics too. And when they raised animals in when they raised mice in germ-free conditions, it impaired their immune response.
Cool.
So what is this saying? Germs aren't gross. They're not disgusting. We need germs to have a good immune response, to have a healthy immune system. And without germs, we can't have a good immune system. We're going to do a presentation on germ theory. It's going to be crazy interesting. So stay tuned for that. And another thing, the microbiome early in life can result in food allergies later. So, like for example, when you have a vaginal birth, the baby swallows a lot of the bacteria in the vaginal canal as it's coming out, and that gives them their gut bacteria. When you breastfeed, the bacteria in your breast milk goes to your baby, and that establishes their microbiome. On the opposite end, if you give your baby antibiotics, let's say they have a minor ear infection and you're just like antibiotics right away, which a lot of ear infections are viral in nature and not bacterial, so antibiotics actually don't do anything, but side point. If you're giving your baby a lot of antibiotics early in life, it wipes out not only their bad bacteria, not only that, what's causing possibly the ear infection, but also the good bacteria. And problem with that is all of these things influence how you're going to react to food. So changes in your gut microbe actually influence whether or not you can orally tolerate food. Another interesting fact, a lot of food allergies are actually a result of your taste bud proteins. It's a reaction with your taste buds, not necessarily your stomach. So if you do have food allergies, you may be able to consume whole food nutritional products, like one that Tracy and I use and swear by, because it's not something that's interacting with your saliva, with your, why can't I keep thinking of the words? With your taste buds. So, and if you change, studies show that if you change your gut microbiome, you may be able to overcome food allergies. So food allergies may not be an end-all be-all diagnosis like we once thought.
Wow.
So immunity, huge in immunity, and we're not even teaching this in school. So let's take a look at this. I don't know if you can see this. I'm gonna pop this up for you. So this is a little graph about how all of these things interact. So you have your diet. Diet influences your microbiome. Obviously, what you put into your body is going to affect what's in your body or what bacteria you have in your body. But your microbiome can also affect your diet. So your microbiome, if you can't ferment your food appropriately because your microbiome is all messed up, it can affect your diet. And like I said, you can develop food intolerances and you can start avoiding foods because you can't tolerate them because your microbiome is messed up. Diet also influences immunity. So like vitamin A, for example, if you have a virus, you need vitamin A in order to overcome the virus. It basically prevents the virus from replicating, from using your cells to multiply. So you need vitamins to help build your immunity. But you also need immunity to absorb your nutrients. So if your immune system is screwed up, you may not absorb nutrients properly. Perfect example of this is autoimmunity. If you have Crohn's disease, you're not absorbing nutrients properly from your diet. And it's kind of like this cycle of like, oh my God, I'm just constantly sick all the time. So how do you fix that? Well, immunity is also related to the microbiome. So if you fix your microbiome, you can fix your immunity and you can eat better. They're all related. So just wanted to share that with you. Please take a screenshot of it. You can email us. I can send it to you. I'd be happy to share more information about that because it is so important to your health. Okay, so immunity. Number 2, mental health. And Tracy's doing a really great presentation on this next week, so stay tuned. Mental health. Panic attacks and anxiety have actually been linked to low vitamin B6 and iron levels. So there's a study that actually showed that people who went to the emergency room with panic attacks, their iron and B6 levels were about half of that of someone who doesn't have panic attacks. So that's a huge difference. And then they also noticed that if they give people 248 milligrams of magnesium a day, they can actually reduce their symptoms of not only panic attacks and anxiety, but depression, which is also closely related to those things. So depression can be due to low magnesium. Depression can also be due to low tryptophan, which we talked about earlier, that thing that you need to produce serotonin, which regulates your mood. So tryptophan is an essential amino acid that's found in a lot of meat, dairy, fruit, and seeds. And so if you can get your tryptophan levels up through your food, you may be able to just change your diet and improve your depression symptoms. And they did a study that showed a Mediterranean diet was actually associated with reduced risk for depression. So developing depression later on. So eating a Mediterranean diet, which is low in animals and only lean animals, basically produce, a lot of produce. So yeah, that can reduce depression symptoms, and that has been proven in studies. Another thing is schizophrenia. This is really interesting. So there are certain things, and Tracy will talk about this next week too, there are certain things that manifest themselves in other diseases. So celiac disease is one of those things. So celiac disease can actually cause psychosis, or something that would be diagnosed as schizophrenia. So celiac disease, they have a lot of people with celiac disease have gluten sensitivity. So if you eliminate gluten, then they've actually seen a drastic reduction in symptoms or full remission from schizophrenia. And I mean, before, this was like a lifelong diagnosis. You're doomed, and here's some medication to hopefully manage your symptoms, but won't necessarily cure you. And people have been removing gluten for as little as 3 months, and symptoms are gone, or at least significantly reduced. So that's huge. And if you can avoid taking a pill, or if you can avoid hearing voices in your head that are telling you to do bad things, like with food, that's a crazy concept that nobody has taught me. I mean, I was a psychology major. I didn't learn that in school. So really interesting. So mental health. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. I just picked like my top 3 because I could probably talk about this for 5 days. There's so much information. So right now, what are we doing in mental health? Like I said, we're prescribing medication, and a popular medication for depression is called a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Fancy word, SSRI. That's probably how you've heard it advertised on TV, where we see all these pharmaceutical ads. So that's what's prescribed for depression, and they actually did studies on these medications, and this one study looked at all of these studies that were performed between the 80s and 2000, and it showed a correlation between the placebo group and the intervention group. Now, what does that mean? The intervention group, look at the intervention group. Their scores for depression improved so drastically, but the placebo group is improving too. The placebo is your sugar pill group. So if those are related, then how much change is actually happening? Are you really, like, if they're so strongly related, is it really the medication that's doing anything, or just the fact that people think that they're getting treatment and there's this placebo effect going on? If you want to learn more about how all this works, we have a statistics presentation that you can refer to as well. So the correlation coefficient was 0.45. So 0.4 is moderate, 0.5 is strong relationship. So it's a pretty strong relationship between the placebo and the control.
I'd rather take the placebo.
Right? Give me the sugar pill.
Right.
So another study that was run about the same time frame looked at medication approval. So what they found is that medication approval was based on statistical significance only. And statistical significance, all you need is a little bit of a change, as long as it's like you're pretty confident that this change is going to happen every time. Okay, so we have this 99% confidence interval saying like, hey, there's only a 1% chance that I'm wrong about this. So hey, this medication is working. That's great, but if you're only looking at the statistics and not like the practical numbers, they didn't even test to see what the score changes were. So they rated depression on these scales, and they didn't even check to see like, was it like a 1% difference or a 20% or 50% difference in symptoms? They didn't even look at that. They saw, it's significant. Okay. Well, that's fine that it's significant, but am I going to risk all these side effects from medication, which a lot of antidepressant side effects are suicide also. Yeah. Am I going to risk that over something that may not have any practical significance, that may only be reducing my symptoms by 1%? I don't give a crap if it's statistically significant. 1% symptom reduction is crap. So these studies are so flawed, and medication is being approved based on that. So that's scary to me. I don't like that. So if I can use diet to reduce depressive symptoms, personally, I'd go with diet. So the third thing is physical health. Food greatly affects your physical health. I'm not just saying how fat or skinny you are, how if your abs are showing through, if they're covered with belly fat. Not even talking about that. Cancer. Cancer thrives on sugar. You can literally starve cancer cells by eliminating processed, refined sugar from your diet. Aluminum. Aluminum is a neurotoxin, and when put in your body, it can cause cancer as well. IV vitamin C has actually been shown to kill cancer cells. Orange peels, eating orange peels, which, I mean, who eats the peel, right? But you need the peel, because orange peels can actually prevent cancer, and they can program cell death of cancer cells only. This is huge because when you go to get chemotherapy, they're going to kill everything. Your good cells, your bad cells, cancer, non-cancer. They're going to kill everything. That's why you feel so crappy when you're on chemo. But orange peels target cancer cells only and leave your cells alone. That's huge. The power of nature and food. It knows what to do. It knows how to heal you if you use it. I just really like that. Autoimmune disorders, another huge one related to food. Like I said, if something's happening inside your gut, those immune cell or those cells are leaving your gut, it's going to cause confusion and problems. So, autoimmune disorders have actually been associated with wheat proteins in the blood. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. One, wheat, our bodies have a hard time digesting wheat. So I know initially they said like, oh, white bread, we all ate white bread with our lunches. Then they're like, no, you have to eat wheat. White bread's bad for you. And now we're on multigrain. Well, wheat is hard for your body to digest. And there are a lot of components in wheat that we cannot physically digest. And what happens then? Well, it causes intestinal permeability, which means leaky gut. If you've ever heard of leaky gut syndrome, where literally things inside of your gut are escaping your gut and going into your bloodstream. So your gut is a closed system because you eat a lot of like junk, and your gut is designed to be able to handle that junk. But if you're repeatedly feeding your body stuff that it can't handle, one day that wall might break open, and now that meat that you're eating is escaping into your bloodstream. Like chunks of food are going into your blood. Yuck. That is bad enough. But then you take it a step further, and a lot of the food that we eat has what's called polysorbate 80 in it, and that opens the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier is designed to keep your brain protected from all the other crap in your body. So if you have like a blood infection or something going on, bacteria in your blood, it's not going to get to your brain and kill your brain cells because of that blood-brain barrier. Well, now we're putting stuff in our food that's opening up our blood-brain barrier, and now all of that crap is going to your brain. Yuck. It's really bad, and we're going to talk about that in the next slide too. But a positive note, broccoli or other cruciferous vegetables have actually been associated with a decreased risk of Parkinson's, which we're actually now starting to consider an autoimmune disorder. So yeah, autoimmune in the gut, huge correlation. Pain disorders is another thing. There are certain anti-inflammatory foods that you can eat, or inflammation causing foods that you can avoid. And if you reduce your inflammation, your likelihood of reducing your pain is pretty good. So it could be as simple as like, hey, peppers cause a lot of inflammation. Maybe cut them out for a while, or maybe you have a food intolerance that's causing inflammation in your body. So you need to fix your gut so that you can fix up your food intolerances. Another one, magnesium. Magnesium has been shown, so not only depression and anxiety, but to improve symptoms of fibromyalgia and migraine disorders.
Wow,
so those are just some examples. Again, not an exhaustive list by any means, but I don't want to keep you guys here for 5 days. So let's get to cognition. Saturated fats and refined sugar, which are a huge component of the Western diet, they increase intestinal permeability too. It's not just wheat. So fat, sugar, wheat, so many things that we eat, right? Mm-hmm. They're opening up the blood-brain barrier, and they're allowing neurotoxins to travel in the brain. So let's say you're cooking with aluminum foil. Aluminum foil has been shown to leach into food. So the aluminum leaches into your food. The aluminum is going into your digestive system, and because you have leaky gut, the aluminum is going into your blood, and because you ate polysorbate 80 in your food, the blood-brain barrier is open, the aluminum is going into your brain. Aluminum is a known neurotoxin that causes brain damage. So what you are eating can cause brain damage. So, sorry, don't want to ruin your Sunday morning donuts and coffee from Dunkin' Donuts.
Also check your deodorant for aluminum.
Yeah. The skin is huge. It's an organ that absorbs so much, and anything that you put on your skin goes directly into your bloodstream. So actually what you put on your skin could be even more dangerous than what you're eating. So if you wouldn't eat it, don't put it on your body. If you're not willing to eat that lotion, that sunscreen, don't put it on your body. So, the good news, again, a Mediterranean diet, low in animal products, only lean animals, is associated with reduced risk for cognitive impairment. And that's a pretty significant. It got a 0.6. So if you're having trouble with your health or if you're concerned about your brain function later in life, eat a Mediterranean diet. That diet's great. And again, broccoli is associated with decreased risk of Alzheimer's disease. Yeah. So if you get anything out of this presentation, eat your Mediterranean diet, eat your broccoli, and avoid aluminum like the plague. All right, developmental disorders. There are a lot more than what's on the screen here, but we're going to talk about autism because that's a huge one right now. The microbiome may shape cognitive networks related to emotional and social domains, meaning your microbiome affects the way your brain develops emotionally and socially, which are the two areas that are heavily impacted by autism. The microbiome assists in synapse maturation of the brain, helps your brain mature, helps those connections in the brain mature. And certain hormones affect the severity of autism. So like oxytocin, which is known as the love hormone, that's important for development of sociability, which we all know is a big factor in autism. They have issues with, socialization. So a high-fat diet, which we were saying, a lot of people use high fat to treat certain things, but a high fat diet actually reduces your oxytocin. And when you reduce your oxytocin, you're going to have more trouble developing those social skills. So kids with autism have actually been shown to do better on low fat diets. And let's, differentiate between fats. There's good fats and bad fats. We're talking about animal fat, saturated fat, fat in our junk food, not like avocado fat. That's good fat. Wheat, here we go again, wheat. So your body doesn't know how to process wheat. So it creates antibodies for wheat, but then that causes antibodies to be created for cerebellar proteins. So your cerebellum is what controls like your coordination, your balance, all that stuff. Okay. And so you eat all this wheat, you're creating wheat antibodies, and then you're creating antibodies that are attacking your own brain. So wheat can cause brain damage, basically, like we were saying before. Your body starts attacking the cerebellar proteins. That's not a good thing. You don't want your body attacking yourself. So wheat is bad for you. Again, broccoli is associated with decreased risk for autism as well.
Broccoli.
Eat your broccoli. If you don't like it, put it in the smoothie and put a lot of strawberries in there to mask the taste. So these are the 5 ways that food affects your health. Some special considerations, things you probably don't know. Food can determine gene expression. It's called nutrigenomics, and it's a new area of study. So what you may have the gene for cancer, for lung cancer, for stomach cancer, whatever, but if you're not eating certain foods, that gene may never express. If you're eating healthy foods, that gene just may stay there in your body and never do anything. If you're eating a lot of crap, that gene might come out. So yes, genetics impact our health, but more so than genetics are the kind of, the foundation, but really more so what affects your health is what you're putting into your body, what you're eating. We all know that what a woman eats while she's pregnant and breastfeeding affects the child's health. What you may not know is what a man eats prior to conceiving a child also affects the child's health. So what nutrients are in his sperm can affect the health of the baby. So men are like, I can eat whatever I want. I'm not the one getting pregnant, and a lot of women use pregnancy as an excuse to eat like crap. Well, this is a vital time in your child's life where they're developing their brain and their intestine and everything and developing bacteria in their gut. So I know it's hard. I mean, I've been pregnant. I got the cravings and all that, but try your best to eat your best. So anyway, so men, folate, right? We want a lot of women to have folate in their diet. Men too, because men that were low in folic acid actually it was associated with children having more birth defects. So we always said women need folic acid. Well, if you're going to get pregnant, tell your significant other you better take some folic acid too. Or you men listening, take some folic acid too, because it's not just women who need it. Both parents need folic acid to make that healthy baby and reduce risk of complications. Diet-induced obesity in the father's sperm could impair glucose tolerance in the offspring. This is a big one. We're talking about like type 1 diabetes here. These were rat studies. I want to just point that out. So they weren't tested on humans, but it's a good foundation that maybe we can expand upon for humans, and I believe it, to be honest. So if a father is obese because of his diet choices, that gets into his sperm, goes to the baby, and the baby gets really confused about how to tolerate sugar, whether or not sugar is bad for them or not, glucose. Good sugar, bad sugar, all the sugar. And that includes sugar from like fruits and things that are healthy. So obesity is not just a problem for your own health, but it could affect your child's health too. So make health decisions not only for yourself, but for your children as well. Okay, so wow, I can eat my way to better health? Yes, you can. Healthy individual needs to eat 8 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. 4 to 5 of fruits, 4 to 5 of vegetables. So problem is, this number is based on fruit that is picked at the optimal time. So a lot of times, all the time, what happens is farmers pick their fruit early because, or vegetables, fruit, all of it early because now you have transport time, you got to get it to the stores, you got to get it on the shelves, and by the time all that happens, it's going to become more and more ripe. So they have to pick it early in order for it to be the optimal ripeness when it gets to your cart. Problem with that is if you pick fruit and vegetables early, you're not getting all the nutrients. You didn't give it time to get all the nutrients. So it's not the same as you eating a tomato from your garden as you eating a tomato from the grocery store. It's not the same nutritional content. So this 8 to 10 servings is based on fresh fruit, freshly picked fruit that was not picked prematurely. So how many of us are getting that? Because I don't get 8 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, no way. And I definitely don't get it based on what I buy from the store. So sad day, right? But we, like I said, we take a nutritional supplement. It's not really a supplement, it's a health product.
Yeah.
Whole food health product that kind of bridges the gaps. I do the best I can. It makes up for what I'm missing out on. So alive2thriveot@gmail.com and we can give you some more info. So not only do you need a lot of fruit and picked at a good time, you need to mix it up. Variety matters for 2 reasons that I'm aware of. Different fruits and vegetables have different vitamin contents, obviously, but they also complement one another. And I couldn't find this study, but there was a study on tomatoes and their anti-cancer properties. And they were great. They were killing cancer cells. But when the tomatoes were combined with another vegetable, I can't remember what the vegetable was, it killed twice as many cancer cells. So they help each other, help you. So you need a variety in your life. Don't just eat the same thing over and over again because it's not going to be as beneficial as getting a variety. So how do you know what food is the best? So first you start with your GMOs, right? Red, wrong, never, don't eat it. GMOs are terrible for you. It literally stands for genetically modified food. Why are we modifying our food? Corn? You can't even find regular corn these days. It's all genetically modified. Why are we modifying our food? Leave it alone. Nature knows what we need. Why are you touching it? Well, that's what we're doing. It's not good for you. It's very, very bad for you. Avoid it at all costs. Pretend like it's not even here. Then you have inorganic. And I put a warning label because there's something called the Dirty Dozen. There are 12 foods that the EWG, the Environmental Work Group, comes up with every year that are infested with pesticides. And pesticides are neurotoxins. They're really bad for your health. They're really, really bad for your brain, your gut, all of it. So you got to be careful which fruits you're eating. Like strawberries, always number 1 every year that I've seen it. So I don't buy strawberries that are not organic because it's not good for you. Next level is organic. So organic vegetables are great because they don't allow for all of these pesticides. They do allow a small percentage of pesticides because organic farms are right next door to non-organic farms and the wind blows. I have a windmill there. That's why I have the windmill. If the wind blows, they can blow the pesticides onto their food. So you can't totally prevent it necessarily. They do test the soil a couple times and they have a certain percentage of pesticides they allow in food. NSF certified over here is the gold standard because they test the soil like half a dozen to a dozen times. They test it a lot and they don't allow any pesticides in the food. So you know you're getting like the most natural food that's possible. Organic is hard enough to find in stores. NSF certified, I don't even know, honestly, I don't even know where you would go for that. Aside from the whole food nutritional product we take, I don't even know. So organic is your best bet. I know it's expensive, so you can go inorganic on certain foods. At the end of this video, I'm going to link you to a list of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, so you can figure out for yourself which foods you might want to always buy organic and which foods are safer to go with non-organic. So we'll talk about that in that video. So how do you proceed? Again, know your Dirty Dozen and your Clean 15. Email us at alive2thriveot@gmail.com. Subject, increase my fruits and vegetables, and we'll tell you a little bit about easy ways that you can do that. And so that is it.
That was a lot of references.
That's a lot of, yeah, it was so much work. It was so much work. I worked so hard for you guys, so I really hope you listen to all that. And this is probably my favorite presentation, one of the most important ones, because your gut, we're not learning about it. We're not learning about the way our gut impacts our health, and we should be learning about it and spreading this knowledge. So please, please, please share this video. It is important for your health and the health of our society, and we care about you.
There's some very huge breakthroughs here.
All right, so if you could like our video, please subscribe to our channel, share the video, visit us at facebook.com/Lauren and Tracy. And there's always information on there about our podcasts. So thank you guys for sticking with us. And we wish you physical, emotional, and spiritual health and wellness. Take care.
Bye. Whoa, that was really amazing.
I lost my mouse.